Hockeytown, it's a place where dreams are found. We fought so many battles here, now we're the ones that they will fear. The cup resides within our town, we won't stop no letting down. The cup is ours, we're all to drink. It's our time, let's rock this ring. Hey, Hockeytown.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Hockeytown Rundown. You are here with us, your beautiful hosts, once again, Carlo, Derek, and Zach. Boys, happy Sunday. Happy holiday weekend. Carlo, it was for you last weekend, but now it's our turn over here in the Americas.
Enjoy it. Enjoy
it. Honestly, boys, I ended up buying myself a poolside chair. I have no pool, but I was like, I want to get some sun this weekend. It's still in the box sitting right next to me currently, actually. But maybe sometime today I'll bust it out.
Yeah, you should probably open that up.
I got a wedding coming up in San Diego, so I'm trying to get that tan on, trying to get that golden bronze look for the photos and everything.
So you got to get that before you walk over and burn.
Yeah. What are you guys up to this weekend? What's going on?
Dude, absolutely nothing really going on over here. Being lazy, and I love it for once. Minus the fact that I have to go to a theater show in Grand Rapids, but that is what it is. Nice. It might be fun. I don't know. It's not hockey, so.
Yeah, kind of the same thing, boys. Not much. Just hanging out, doing the thing. Not a whole lot. Just enjoying it. I don't have tomorrow off, unfortunately. I did have, that was last weekend, like you mentioned, Zach. So just another lazy Sunday, man. Getting ready to kick off the work week tomorrow, and away we go.
That's what's up. Yes, sir. And from here, you already know what to do. If you are returning, thank you for returning. But if you haven't already, and if you are new, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, because we are going to get this to 20 likes thanks to you guys, because we have a guest appearance today by Brian Fisher from the Locked On Red Wings podcast. Check it out right here, right now. Well, we got a special guest on here today, Carlo, none other than Brian Fisher from the Locked On Red Wings podcast. Brian, I've been a huge fan of your podcast for quite some time. I'm sure Carlo is too, but thanks for joining us today. And I'll leave the floor open to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your and everything else about you.
Well, first, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm always down to talk some Red Wings. I've already recorded one Red Wings podcast today, my own Locked On Red Wings, that I record with my co-host Scotty Bentley. And about an hour later, hop on with you guys to talk more Red Wings. And, if any of my friends know me, they know that I can talk on end about the Detroit Red Wings. And I'm excited because you obviously, little peek behind the curtains, you sent me the questions you want to ask me ahead of time. I look at these and I go, oh man, I know exactly what I'm going to say for all of these, because these are questions I'm passionate about for the Red Wings, how the season turned out and how it's going out and how it's going to go in the next season as well. And I'm looking forward to it, man. I appreciate you and Carlo inviting me on for this episode.
Yeah, not a problem. So Carlo, I think we could just jump right into it with some of the questions, right? So some of them will be related to the Detroit Red Wings. Some of them can be related to you as well, Brian, because I did do a little digging about you. So I have some personal questions that maybe you could share on the podcast with our viewers and watchers. So let's go ahead and jump right into it, boys. So we know how the Red Wings season ended. Fell a little short. Wish that they were in the playoffs right now. Maybe they could have made it to the second round. Who knows? I know a lot of people were skeptical on that happening. But Brian, I'm curious, what were your overall expectations for the Detroit Red Wings this season? Was it to make the playoffs? Was it just to see a jump on certain players? What really was it?
Yeah, so Scotty and I talked about this at length going into the year, obviously. And the big thing we kept saying is we wanted to be the last team in the playoffs or the last team out of the playoffs come the end of game 82. And they, in a very literal sense, accomplished that goal, right? Like, it took until the last minute of regulation of the Flyers-Capitals game for the Red Wings to be eliminated. The Detroit, in their own game, forced overtime to keep their season alive with 3 seconds left against the Montreal Canadiens. So going into the season, like, that was our goal, and they accomplished it in that regard. But see expectations change, right? So while I'm very happy with the large jump they took this year, an 11-point jump, they missed the playoffs on a tiebreaker. After the run that they had in January and February, and I understand they were playing well above their pay grade at that moment. Their PDO was insane. They were one of the luckiest teams in the NHL at that time. I knew they were going to come down to earth. The crash that they had down to earth is honestly unacceptable. You know, at one point, they're 9 points up on the first wild card team, or they are the first wild card team for 9 points up, just 2 points back of the Toronto Maple Leafs. You can't crash and burn as much as they did. So while I think, and this is where, again, we joked before we recorded, right, that I'm a little bit of a fence sitter. This is where I think both things can be true. The way the season ended was a failure, because they were sitting so comfortably in a playoff spot. To let it trickle away like that is just borderline unacceptable. Well, not even borderline. It isn't acceptable. Yeah. And I understand the flu ravaged the locker room. You could see that. Players who were recovering from illness did not look the same. Remember, Moritz Seider caught the flu like last on the team when he played battling the flu after going to the ER that morning, but his minutes were limited to like 15 minutes a night rather than the 25 we normally see. I know Dylan Larkin was hurt, but these are all things that all teams in the NHL deal with. And the Red Wings are actually, especially on the blue line, one of the healthiest teams in the NHL this season. Yeah. So I just take all of that into account, and I feel like the season ended in failure, not making the playoffs after how they had gotten themselves into such a favorable position. But my caveat to that, and this is where I'm a fence sitter, I think in terms of the rebuild, this was a massive success. Because it is very hard, and I said this the season before when talking about the Buffalo Sabres. It is very hard for a team to jump 10 points from season to season. The Red Wings jumped 11 points from season to season. They saw huge improvements, huge strides in their power play, their penalty kill, their goals for, their goals against still is an area at 5-on-5 that is it continues to plague them, which is, again, Derek Lowe's specialties defense. So this is where in season 3 of Derek Lowe, I really need to see that defensive mindset that he loves really take over. But as a rebuild, this was a huge step forward for the team and makes me excited for what's to come next year.
And for what's excited to come next year, does that include someone like a Patrick Kane, seeing as though that he is set to be an unrestricted free agent this upcoming off season? So what does that look like for you? Do you see Patrick Kane coming back in the picture? What does that look like to you in terms of dollars, term, all of the above?
Well, the first thing that you'll have to do for Patrick Kane if you want to keep him is offer him a no-trade clause, like a full no-trade clause. He's made it very clear that that is what he wants, at least in my opinion. Again, I'm a podcaster like you guys. I'm not in the locker room. I don't know Patrick Kane personally, but just based on what I've heard him say, it sounds like he wants some place where he can have stability. He'd been to 3 cities in the last year and a half: Chicago, New York, Detroit. So he's going to want no trade clause, and then he's going to want a little bit of term so he doesn't have to immediately go and sign a new contract somewhere else. That's where the hiccup is for me. I don't think I'm necessarily afraid of the number that Patrick Kane's going to ask for, because he proved to be still worth it. And it's incredible because of the fact that I thought, you guys say, Zach, you said you listened before the show. I don't know if you heard the episode, but like leading up to that week where the rumors were really heating up, I went from we don't need him to, well, I guess it can't hurt. And then they signed him because nobody had ever come back from that surgery, that hip resurfacing surgery, in any meaningful way. I was like, he's gonna be screwed. But the way he went about it was so smart, and that's the reason why he did come back. A lot of these other players, and I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but a lot of these other players, they'll have other surgeries first that weaken the hip muscles before getting the hip resurfacing. But his surgeon said that he immediately just jumped right into the deep end and got the hip resurfacing, which allowed him to recover better than other people. And he was Patrick Kane. He was better than Patrick Kane last year because of the fact that he wasn't playing in pain. You saw him wear down a little bit near the end of the season, but he's going to want a full no-trade clause. The Red Wings paid him, just 2.75 million. I think that you could probably get him at 4 to 5 million. I think that's probably a very reasonable number. Maybe I might be coming in on the low side considering a player of his legacy, I guess is the word I'll use. He was a point per game player, if I can say it, at 35, 36 years old. It's just how long do you want him? Because at some point, and some players don't, we saw Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin are still very productive despite their age, but at some point he will fall off. And do you want to have to deal with Patrick Kane at $5-6 million in years 3, 4, 5 when you're a team that's trying to have a sustained window? And that's the big question mark. I'm in camp. If you can get him to come back, do it. But I'm feeling like it's very unlikely right now. But if I had to guess, and again, I'm just guessing, the bare minimum it would take to get him is 3 years, full no trade clause, and $5 to $6 million. I think this is his last contract in his eyes. I think he said he wants to play to 40, but I find it so hard to believe anyone would be willing to give him 5 years. But hey, I've been wrong so many times. Who knows?
Yeah,
I can't tell you how many times I've said that on this podcast too, because like you said, we're not in those rooms. We don't know. Carlos says it all the time. Wish we could just be that fly on the wall in Steve Yzerman's room, right, when he's talking to some of these players. But Carlo, I kind of want you to bring this up because we talked about this and you brought it up. But I should mention this first. Carlo, I will give him credit for planting the seed of Patrick Kane coming over to Detroit, because as soon as we traded for Alex DeBrincat, he made a tweet saying, all right, we're going to go get Patrick Kane. And same as you, Brian, I was like on the fence about that. I was like, no way. Then it starts heating up. It's like, okay.
Yeah, just some context before I tweeted that too. Like, so, Brian, I was with you all day on the whole fact that really nobody's come back from this surgery. Like, I 100% respected that before I go and put out a hot take tweet like that. But what got me was the fact, like, I did some research on who the surgeon was. And then when I did the research on who the surgeon was, I realized that this surgeon also worked on Andy Murray, who is a world-class tennis player, who came back from that surgery and actually, I believe, played 3 tournaments and won one of them. Don't quote me on that. He definitely did win one of them. I don't know if he played a full 3. Maybe it was 2. But when I found that out, I'm like, okay, this guy's obviously taking this very seriously. Like, he's obviously being very picky, choosy, which he absolutely should be with a surgery like that. That's kind of where I'm like, I really smell a Patrick Kane to Detroit scent right now. And then I put out that tweet, and gosh, I am so happy that it panned out for us, because it was super entertaining. It was a great year. But yeah, Zach, sorry, what was you wanted my take on what?
Yeah, you're good. So we've kind of talked about this, and I think a lot of people on social media have as well. Why don't you just kind of make the AAV smaller, right? So kind of keeping it low in terms of the AAV, but then you front load it with performance bonuses or any kind of signing bonus, right? Is that something that you could do to lessen the cap, Brian? Is that something that you could see the Red Wings doing? Also, you, Carlo, I know that that's something you said, so if you want to touch on that a little bit more.
So I'll be honest, when it comes to the intricacies of the cap hits, that's not something I'm super well versed on. I think that it all, in the end, goes towards the AAV, because the annual, as far as I'm aware, the annual average salary is nothing more than this salary kind of sparsed out, right? Mm-hmm. Like those signing bonuses, those performance bonuses, I think still count. I could be completely off base. I'm not really super sure on the intricacies of that. But yeah, I mean, that one, I'm not super confident enough on the intricacies of the cap structure to speak upon.
I think all the signing bonus, or sorry, not the signing bonus, but performance bonuses allow you to do is to keep the AAV down a little bit, with the full understanding from manager to player that, hey, if X happens, you're going to get an extra X on top of this lower AAV. I believe that's how it kind of shakes out at the end of the year, or throughout the year. I'm sure the way the performance bonuses work, it's probably I'm sure the NHL season is kind of broken down into quarters, just like a business calendar year would be. I'm sure they have some sort of situation like that with the NHL schedule, and they kind of break it down over a 2 or 3 month process, and then your payouts kind of come from there. I mean, it's got to be similar to that, I would imagine, for somewhat of an easeability, and then somewhat of like a way to measure. You got to measure it, right? So it's got to be something like that. I would imagine it.
And I can see that being like a team that's like cap strapped. Here's the thing is the main reason I'm leaning Kane doesn't return is because there is going to be some team out there that is a cup contending team whose window is closing fast, that is trying to capitalize 1, 2, however many more years they have until their superstars retire. I mean, I think you guys can pick up on what I'm laying down here. Sure. There's going to be some team, because we say it about other leagues, but NHL is quickly becoming another one of those leagues where the cap's not real, right? Like we see every single year at the deadline, people acquire players that put them $5 million in the cap, and then shenanigans happen. That is technically legal. The LTIR thing is technically legal, but shouldn't be.
Well said. Good
job.
To make it so that they can figure the cap out. Like last summer, right? The Maple Leafs went hard trying to add grit to their roster, and they asked Tree Living, like, how are you going to fit this all under the cap? He's like, well, that's for the finance guy to figure out. Like, if a team wants Patrick Kane, they're going to offer him the term that he wants because they're not worried about their future. They're worried about now. And Patrick Kane right now is still a high-quality player. So I could see that, Carlo, being, when it comes to the signing bonuses and things like that, and the performance bonuses, coming into play more for those teams in those instances than for the Red Wings, who actually do have cap space to offer, because there's going to be some team that's going to be willing to overpay for Patrick Kane after he proves that he still has it to try and just run it back one more time.
Yeah, sure.
And you kind of, and it's funny that you brought this up, you kind of talked about cap strapping, and a lot of people are getting nervous because we have 2 really big RFAs that we need to sign that could, not because of them, but could lead us to being short on cap a little bit as we move into the offseason. So Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider, not talking about their contracts, but could you see, this is a question by Matt, one of our other hosts, but could you see one of those 2 potentially wearing an A upcoming pretty soon? I know that you kind of touched on that in one of your recent episodes, or do you see any prospect in general that could eventually wear an A or even a C once Dylan Larkin is off the team?
Well, I'll say this, and yeah, we did have that conversation. I think it was Monday's episode of Locked On Red Wings. Moritz Seider, in my eyes, if you want to have, assuming David Perron does leave and that extra letter does open up, in my eyes, is a slam dunk pick. Yeah. I mean, one, he is the number 1 defenseman on your hockey team. He's the guy. Like, you are building around Moritz Seider on your blue line. You know, we know that in the first season, he was jovial. He was a kid. He had that levity towards him, and he still has that kind of jokester personality. But we've also seen his ability to lock it down and lock in. We've seen serious Moritz Seider as well. He's a guy who is very, very, very much team first oriented. I said this on the episode on Monday. Like, he doesn't worry about his own personal stats, which, by the way, are still very impressive. Oh, yeah. I think a lot of people lose sight of the fact that a half point per game from a defenseman is really, really impressive, because people have just gotten used to the era of, Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, who just score 80, 90 points. Well, they don't really play defense. They don't get the deployments that Moritz Seider gets. Moritz Seider, and I've talked about this ad nauseum as well, he has the league's toughest deployments, he and Woolman both, but Seider even more than Woolman, have the league's toughest deployments, gets the most D-zone starts, and he doesn't complain about it. No. Because he worries about the team's success. And if that is the way that Lalone tells him is going to lead to the most team success, by putting him out there on the toughest minutes and the toughest deployments to just get the puck out of the defensive zone so the forwards can do their work, and you can put Shane Gostisbehere out there in the offensive zone to do his work, then he's fine with that. And for me, that is just such an incredible trait for a player to have. I'm not in the locker room. I don't know what his leadership, what his voice is like in the locker room. I don't know if he's developed the leadership voice yet, but I would think that if not now, in the near future, he's a slam dunk to wear the letter. And I think Lucas Raymond's not that far behind, right? The main reason I would put Seider ahead of Raymond is just simply because of positional value. You want to, your premier defenseman to have a letter. Raymond plays winger, which in terms of all the positions on the ice has the least value. Not trying to undersell Raymond's value because he's proved himself to be one of the most important players on the team. But Raymond has, I would argue, I don't want to say that he has more competitive fire than Moritz Seider because I feel like trying to compare those two is just like you can't do that.
Yeah,
but we
hard.
saw, right, the scuffle with Ben Sherratt during the season, and people were making it out to be a huge deal. But like I look at that and I see a team and I see a player that cares.
Yeah.
This is a team that was struggling at that time to win games. And Lucas Raymond at 23 years old is pissed off because the team is struggling and it boiled over in practice. I like to see that because that competitive fire will help drive a team forward. Now, obviously, there's a place and time for it. You can't go off on your teammates all the time, and clearly that hasn't happened. We saw it the next game, right? Lucas Raymond got in a scuffle. Sherratt was the first player to come to his defense, and then they're in the box, and Lucas Raymond pats him on the leg. Like, there's nothing more than tensions boiling over. But I do think that Lucas Raymond down the line could have it too. I'm just not in the locker room. I don't know what their voice has developed yet because they're still on the younger side compared to a lot of their teammates. I mean, short term, there are guys you could give it to too. I know people hate on Jeff Petrie, and I was one of those people for large parts of the season. I think a big part of the reason why he looked so bad at points was because he was over deployed. He's just not the first. He's not that guy anymore. He's not.
Correct.
He's a third pair right side D, but he's had leadership roles on the Montreal Canadiens when they were making the Cup final. I think it was that. I know he wore the A at some point. I can't remember if that was year. It was that year in
I
particular.
think it was, Brian. I'm pretty sure
But
it was.
Jeff Petrie's like proven himself to be a locker room leader. Like you got guys on the team. Michael Rasmussen's worn the A at times when injuries happened. So, and I mean, talk about a guy who I've never seen Michael Rasmussen smile, and I don't know if I ever will.
We make that comment all the time. Like you cannot stare into his eyes, or else you're getting the death penalty.
Right.
It's bad.
So yeah, there are options. It just depends on what you want. Like I'd prefer to go to Moritz Seider now, but I mean, who knows if he's ready inside the locker room. But if you want short term, there's short term options too. That's a long answer for what was a really simple question.
You know, I want to top up
great.
though, because that was a really good answer. And you know what? I thought about something when you were speaking on Seider. You know, you talked about his deployment. You know, you talked about that half point per game. You know, and I'm kind of coupling all of that with the fact that he had the most amount of blocks and the most amount of hits this year, with over 200 in both categories. And I think even if he doesn't have that voice just yet, which I have a feeling that he does. Again, we're not in the room. This is just my optimism, you know, kicking in. But let's say he doesn't. I think just the way he plays, you know, to go out there and take it on the chin night after night against the hardest guys and then block 200 shots and then go hit 200 times and still put up the numbers. I mean, you just have to respect that like a lot. And I think that is enough for me to say, yeah, this guy, he's not only does he deserve the A, but he's actually earned the A.
So I completely agree with you. I think those are really good points to bring up. And I actually, as much as I'm singing the praises of his deployment, I will say this. That cannot continue. He is too good of a player to be put in that deployment game in and game out. In fact, I think his offense was even hindered. Like the fact that he had half a point per game being put almost exclusively in the defensive zone is incredible.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
I mean,
but it's not sustainable, right? Which I think is what you're getting to.
Right. Like you can't put him in that role game in and game out and have him block 200 shots and expect his Iron Man streak to continue. Right, and he's got too much of an offensive upside to continue playing in that role, right? Like there was a point in the season when I was looking at his minutes played and he was 22, 23 minutes, and you had the second pair 22, 23 minutes and the third pair 18 minutes. And I go, that's just not how you use a number one D-man. Like if you believe Moritz Seider is your true number one D-man, you're playing him 27 minutes a night, and those extra 4 minutes a night are coming in the offensive zone against lesser competition, so you can unlock his offensive upside. Like as much as I love to laud the fact that he had the toughest competition in the league, at some point it also hurts him. He's too good of a player to be pigeonholed into that role, and I think part of that is roster construction, right? Like we had Yzerman went out there and he acquired a bunch of D-men. He had a huge pool. In fact, it blocked Simon Edvinsson. And I'll straight up say it. He blocked Simon Edvinsson with those acquisitions. But all those defensemen that he got were middle of the pack. So you force then, because you have a mid at best decor, Sider to take all the tough competition. And so going forward, you got to unload Justin Hull, which I think is mutually beneficial to both parties, because I don't think Hull wants to sit another 50 plus games in the press box like he did this year. And plus he would get the salary off. If you can, Simon Edvinson has to be a mainstay on the, and I think he is. I think he earned it at the end of the season. I think that was clear. But there's got to be some defensive turnover. You got to upgrade that blue line yet again, because Moritz Seider is too good to be playing just in the D zone. This is a player who we saw him get 50 points his rookie season. I think he can be north of 50 every single year. I think he has that in him.
I'm with you.
You just this last season, you didn't really have a choice. You didn't have faith in any of your other defensemen to play in the D zone.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And that's the one thing that I am so cautious about is the overworking. I mean, we know that the goalies get overworked, and we see what happens as a result of that. And I just hope that does not catch up to Moritz Seider, because we kind of have a tendency. But I think you kind of nailed why we have that tendency, and really it comes down to roster construction. But I still think, regardless of the roster, you need to know how to manage that roster 100%. And I don't want to go there just yet or at all, but I'm not completely sold on the way the roster has been managed in the last few years. But I'm not saying that's a write-off. There's a third year coming here where I think there's an off season to go as well. I think there's going to be some changes made. There will be. Yeah. You know what I mean? And maybe we see a bit of a different look, which allows for a little bit of a better job on the management side of the roster. But yeah, that's kind of my spiel on that.
So kind of a good segue into that, Carlo, because this is one of your questions, and I'll just ask it for you. In your personal opinion, Brian, one thing, because you also mentioned earlier when we started recording, is the downfall of the Wings in February and then March, and how the way it ended, it was very unpleasant, right? And so in your mind, do you believe that there should be some sort of a hot seat for head coach Derek Lalonde at the beginning of next season?
At the beginning? Well, God, this is a really good question. Because I've thought about it a lot too, and I'm still kind of going back and forth, right? Like, people were calling for Derek Lalonde's head. Not everybody, but there was a segment of Red Wings fans that were calling for Derek Lalonde's head.
We were, depending on the day too,
right.
Give or take, right?
Me too. Like, there were definitely games where I was super critical of the way he was using players, right? I just talked about Moritz Seider's deployment. Right. And like, dude, how you only giving him 22 minutes a night? Like, you gotta you look at the usage that guys, like, again, they get offensive zone deployments mostly, but like your top D men in the league all average like 27 minutes a night. That's how you use those guys. Hot seat, that's hot start of the season. I would say that there is a hot seat if the team starts really poorly. If they start off on the wrong foot and they quickly just, I'm not going to give out a record because I'm not sure, but let's just say at the end of October, they have like a pretty confident losing record. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if not just if a move was made, but if the rumblings were really seriously there, because Yzerman during the postseason media availability, he's a master at compliment sandwiches, right? Yes, he'll start off saying something really good, say what he really wants to say, and then finish by saying off something complimentary again. And like in the middle of everything he said about the coaching staff was, we have got to get better defensively, because while this is a team in 2 years under Derek Lalonde has seen huge strides in point totals and player performances, it's also a team that's collapsed in the second half of every single year. Yeah. And that is, you can't have that again. So I think if the team starts off fine, that he'll be fine. But it's really, for me, it's going to come down to that final stretch again. Like, can they make it the full 82 and make the playoffs, or will they run out of steam and fall apart again? Because if they fall apart at the end of the third season, after doing it the previous 2 years, I think then it's a legitimate like criticism or concern or whatever adjective you want to use in this situation that Derek Lalonde might have to be fired. And I like Derek Lalonde. I think he's a great personality. I think the players really do enjoy him. I know that he made some comments that I didn't agree with down the run when they were playing really poorly, but I think that was just him playing the media game, because again, what coaches say to the media and versus what they say in the locker room is completely not. There's only one John Tortorella. He's the only one who will ever tell you what he's really thinking.
Yeah.
So I like Derek Lalonde a lot, but if the system's not working, then a change has to be made. So I usually live my life by the rule of 3. 3 episodes for a new show, 3 years for a head coach to make sure, see if it works, see if I like it.
I like that.
I'm gonna live by that from now on, Brian. That is awesome. But I'm curious to know, is it mutual with the assistant coaches? Alex Tanguay, Bob Bubner. There's one more that I always forget. Maybe Carlo can help me out. Maybe Brian can. But
Westland.
Yeah. Alex
yes,
Westland.
He's the goalie coach. Yeah.
So is it the same with those assistant coaches as well as it is with Derek Lalonde? Because for me, Alex Tanguay, I have a love-hate with them. I think special teams, it's hit or miss every single month, right? It's very confusing to me, and sometimes they look hot. Sometimes they look like that they just played on the third game of a triple back-to-back-to-back.
Yeah, so this is a really tough one too, because the problem is you never, from coaching staff to coaching staff, it's hard to tell who really calls the shots. I think, and this is just me speculating, I want to put that out there as a disclaimer, but I would gather, predict, assume, again, whatever adjective you want to use, that Derek Lalonde is probably leaning on the experience of his assistant coaches to help him make some calls. Because remember, he's a rookie coach at the NHL. Bob Bugner has been a head coach in the NHL before for a really bad Sharks team. That sometimes I wonder if he's just, and we know for a fact that at times he has deferred to his goalie coach, right? Because I remember there was a start, it might have been the New York Rangers game I was talking to you guys about before we started recording early on in the season when they got killed. Well, they kept Ville Husso in the net the entire time. At the end of the game, we were all like, why did they not pull Husso? It was 5-0 at the end of the second. I think that's what it finished. And Derek Lalonde in the press conference said, well, I talked to the goalie coach, and the goalie coach said, because you got to handle every single goalie. I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but he said that every single goalie handles, it needs to be handled differently. And that for a goalie like Ville Husso, it's important for him to regain his confidence and finish the game. And to his credit, Ville Husso didn't allow a single goal in the third period. But, that is like a little bit of okay, is he calling the shots or is he always leaning? I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. But, the goalie situation, we don't have the best talent in that, but we also keep finding goalies that can't stop a beach ball at times. Like Ville Husso, who was great with St. Louis, right? Except for in the playoffs. But St. Louis also, merit to them. We got to keep in mind, different team. They were a playoff caliber team. They sheltered him a lot better, so he didn't face as many high danger shots. Comes here, and he starts off strong, hits a wall. Same thing happened to Nedeljkovic before that. We see this with, I defended the James Reimer signing. I have such a love-hate relationship with James Reimer because I was like, he's always been a career above 900 save percentage goaltender.
Yeah.
And his 1 year sub 900 was the year before he came to us when he was on a really, 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 really bad Sharks team. And then he bounced back and had a plus 900 save percentage, but he didn't look like he had one. He just, those long shots from out, everything was going between his 5-hole. It was driving me nuts. And then Lyon did what Lyon did. So it's tough to say because I don't think we've ever had like a super high skill goaltender for me to really be able to properly judge somebody like Alex Westland. But there is something to be said about the fact that your goalies have, outside of the 1 month where Alex Lyon was unbeatable, like last year with the Panthers, have been able to be consistently decent. It's always been good, hit a wall. And that, is a little bit of an indictment on coaching. Bob Bugner, I don't know. He's probably fine as an assistant coach. Again, I'm not in the locker room. I don't know how much sway he has. And Tanguay, I'm with you. Love-hate relationship, right? The year before, the power play and penalty kill looked really bad. This year, it was a top 10 power play and a top 15 penalty kill. So that was what I wanted, but you're right. It was very streaky. There were stretches where they looked unbeatable and stretches where they couldn't score. So I don't know. It's tough when it comes to assistant coaches.
We're going to really need that third year here, boys, because, it is that tough. And we're going to need that third year to really to pay attention to that and see what kind of swings they make in the right direction this year. So that's going to be fun. It's going to be great.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sorry. I know I'm just talking your guys' ear off, but I told you before we recorded, I could talk Red Wings for hours on end.
Oh yeah.
I've said this on Locked On Red Wings, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a quiet offseason from Steve Yzerman in terms of roster moves.
Really?
I said, Go ahead.
Go. I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
I've told Scotty this, but I think he has one big move in his pocket. Like that, if he makes a splash, it'll be a different kind of splash than last season. Last 2 off seasons, really, he made huge splashes, signed a bunch of players to make this team better, make them more competitive, and it worked. But because of Seider and Raymond's contracts being up, you're going to have a lot less cap space to work with. You also have a lot less roster holes to fill. And if you're expecting a few young guys to make the roster like I do, I think Carter Mazer is a near lock. I think Jonathan Berggren is, he kind of has to be that, or he's on another team. Same thing with Albert Johansson, because neither of those guys are waiver eligible anymore. And could Marco Kasper make a push? Could Nate Danielson? I'm not saying all those guys. Simon Edmondson's a lock, but you have a handful of guys who are borderline, if not are NHL ready. So you don't really have the roster space. And I'm sorry, I'm not blocking these guys again. I'm not doing this again. I'm not doing the song, Edmondson song and dance again. That with the cap space you have and the roster moves that you have to fill, with the exception of things I can't predict, like trades to clear roster space, I think Yzerman has one big free agent signing up his sleeve, and I don't know who it's going to be. My primary target, if you don't go out and get somebody via trade, would be personally Jake Gensel, because I think he fits the cup window. He's sub 30 years old. He's had multiple 40-goal seasons. He had a great post-deadline with Carolina. That was the big question mark for me, because I'm like, okay, now you're leaving Sidney Crosby's side. You're going to a Carolina team that is boring to watch, that just is not offensive oriented whatsoever. They get a lot of shots on goal, but it's just one of the most boring styles of hockey I've ever seen, because they're so defensively responsible. They block everything. I was like, how will a guy like Jake Gensel produce? And he produced really good. You have to pay him $9+ million, but do you want to sign Daniel Sprong again? I'd rather upgrade.
Okay, are you lying when you say that you weren't one of those people that was hyping up Daniel Sprong when he was on that hot streak to re-sign him, Brian? Because I was, and I think a lot of us were.
I don't actually remember how I was, so I'm going to talk on my ass a little bit. So I liked Daniel Sprong a lot, kind of like Dominic Kubalik early on in his season with the Red Wings. I liked him a lot at the beginning of the season because he came out roaring and he was scoring goals. But then as the season dragged on and the team began to slump, he disappeared. He stopped scoring goals, and to the point where the team was struggling so badly defensively that they just healthy scratched him. To the point I was talking with Will Scouch on our episode for today. It might have been off air, but I told him I was kind of done with the Daniel Sprong experiment. I was like, you have Jonathan Berggren. That's who's going to replace Daniel Sprong. They're both offensive-oriented guys who are goal scorers, who are going to play bottom six. I'm sorry, Jonathan Berggren truthers. He's not a prospect. He's not even a rookie anymore because he played 67 games and then got demoted the next season. He's a bottom six forward, which is fine. If he gives you 40 points from the bottom six, that's a huge win from a second-round draft pick perspective. But if he comes up, you're not re-signing Daniel Sprong because you also have Robbie Fabry for another year.
So, and it's funny that you bring up Robbie Fabry because I'm not a Robbie Fabry truther. People can hate on me all they want, and it kind of ties into everything that you just mentioned and that I kind of correlated to. But if there was a buyout candidate on this team, who would it be in your personal opinion? To me, I have a couple players where Fabry could be one of them, might be a better trade candidate. Ville Husso could be one of them if you wanted to go out and get another defenseman. Then everyone's favorite defenseman that never gets to play, Justin Hall, right? Or Jeff Petrie. Do you have a particular player on this team that you would buy out?
Run those three by me again. It was Fabry,
Husso, and then Justin Hall.
I don't see. I personally, honestly, I don't see them buying out Fabry or Ville Husso, just because one. James Reimer's gone. They're going to sign a third goalie, or they'll let Sebastian Cossa get some looks. But I don't think Sebastian Cossa starts the season with the team, honestly, because goalies just they're weird.
Right.
You still need a goalie for next year. And Ville Husso, as much as he wasn't great in the limited time we did see him, he also didn't get a very big chance to correct that narrative because he was hurt the whole time. He's only got 1 year left. And then you're scot-free. Do you really want to stretch that? You have it, it's in half, and then it's 2 years. Do you really want to put another $2+ million on the cap for an extra year. Same thing with Robbie Fabry. He's getting paid $4 million. You just ride it out for one more year and then you're off scot-free. I don't think that that's a really smart option for a team that really has to start thinking about the cap soon.
Correct.
Like we're so used to having all this cap space, but starting this offseason after Raymond and Sider are signed, like now you actually have to worry about it. So buying those guys out doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I do think that Justin Holl, if you cannot offload him through trade, then you do have to seriously consider it, because you can't start next season with him on your roster. I'm sorry.
No.
If this is the deployment he's going to get, and by deployment I mean sitting in the press box, you can't run it back. Like it's not fair to him as a player. Like he's a guy who played 80 games with the Toronto Maple Leafs and played second pair minutes the year before. Now, granted, he was a scapegoat. He was their scapegoat. But, like, this is a guy who's used to playing big-time minutes. Yeah. And then he didn't play. He wants to play. So I'm sure there's already been mutual, again, I'm speculating, but I'm speculating with confidence that there's probably been discussions between Justin Holl and the front office about getting him moved. And I do think you could move him. I'm not saying he's unmovable.
I'm with you. I think he has some sort of value somewhere, because you see a lot of people saying like, oh, it's a buyout or you're going to have to give up something. To me personally, I think there's some value there. You, at least a minimum, I think you could get a 7th round pick for Justin Holl, Brian.
For me, it's not even about getting something in return. It's about offloading the contract. And I think, if you can't offload all 3.4, at least 50% retained, because that way, if you, like we just established, if you buy him out, then you're doubling the length of his contract, but having the cost. Well, if you trade him for 50% retained, you're still paying the same amount of cost as a buyout, but it's still only over the remaining 2 years. That's still a win to get that contract offloaded. Oh, yeah. And like there are teams, like we were that team. Like we know from firsthand experience, the Red Wings were that team that for a time took veteran D-men on bloated contracts in order to just meet the cap floor or add a veteran presence to help the young guys grow. Remember Mark Stahl? Yeah. Anybody?
There you go.
That? Like there are teams out there rebuilding, and Justin Holl now, this is just me speculating, but Justin Holl now has to kind of reestablish himself. Yeah. So he's going to need to go to a team that really has no choice but to play him. Yeah. So I'm like Chicago Blackhawks. They're always they gave Athanasiou and Mrazek like $4 million deals. They're just trying to hit the cap floor. Yeah, no doubt. They might need another guy, and he can eat big minutes. He's capable of it. San Jose Sharks. Like I understand, like it might be a little optimistic to think you can offload all $3.4 million that you owe him for the next 2 years, but I think that you can absolutely trade him for 50% retained. I don't know about if you'd get anything back, but I don't care about that. You need to clear the cap. It's like the Klim Kostin situation. Like it's just mutually beneficial for both players. And I mean, worst case scenario, you do buy him out because you just can't be on the team next year if this is how you're going to use him.
Yeah,
correct. Yeah. And I only threw in the 7th round pick in there because I'm right there with you. I believe he has value, and getting something back isn't what I'm looking for. But I'm saying in general, I believe he has value that some team out there would take him, even if we were getting nothing back, that we wouldn't have to sacrifice a 2nd round pick like they did for Mark Stahl coming over to Detroit, back during the COVID days. But
so there's a fun question. This is a fun one. And maybe it's not next year, maybe it's the year after. But Brian, I'm just curious in your mind, who do you think has the next Lucas Raymond type of year? Maybe I'll even say Alex Lyon type of year. Just that really shock you. Not that we weren't expecting it from Lucas Raymond. I certainly wasn't expecting the play out of Alex Lyon. But who do you think is going to have that next breakout year on the team? When and why?
Oh, that is a really, really, really good question. I don't want to pour a cold bucket over your head, but I don't know if there is anyone on the team or in the pipeline who has that kind of breakout season in them. I mean, my cop-out answer would be, I think, Moritz Seider with easier deployment, wrapping back to what we were earlier saying.
Fair point.
Break out a little bit offensively. I would not expect any of our prospects to come up their rookie year to have that kind of year, but, I think Carter Mazur would quickly earn the hearts of the fans he's just an absolute dog, right? Like the dude's a dog. We saw it I don't know if you guys watched the Grand Rapids game the other night, but the disallowed goal, I mean, that's like the type of stuff you're getting from Carter Mazur. He doesn't give up on plays. And he's not going to be a 70-point guy in the NHL, but I think he could easily be a half-point per game guy that wins puck battles, wins foot races, and goes to the net. And I think that's going to quickly win the hearts of Red Wings fans. And you know what? If you want an actual answer to your real question, I mean, I do still believe in Alex DeBrincat.
I was just going to say. Yeah.
That's a good call out. Yeah.
I mean, it's weird because I was with all the Red Wings fans who are disappointed in his production, goal scoring production, because our expectation of him, we were like, okay, he scored 40 goals twice, but let's calm down a little bit.
Sure.
We didn't, at the time of his signing, we didn't have prime Patrick Kane on our team. So we were like, okay, I think it's fair to expect at least 30 goals. We saw large stretches this year where he could not bury the puck.
Yeah.
But what you did see in place of that, and I understand that it's not replacing, actually physically replacing the goals scored, but what we did see in place of that was a player who didn't give up. He hustled in every single game. And this is a guy who historically is not known for his defense.
Yep.
I saw him try defensively more than I ever would have expected. It's like it clicked in his brain where he's like, if I am having trouble scoring goals, I better freaking contribute elsewhere on the ice. Yeah. And if you go to Dauber Hockey Tools and you look up their player usage chart, he's one of the best forwards on the team relative to the rest of his teammates. It's him, Lucas Raymond, Dylan Larkin, and Patrick Kane are the 4 best forwards on the team, and they're positive relative to their teammates. So he did contribute. He had a career high in assists. Because he's playing with, Lucas Raymond found a scoring touch. That's going to boost his assists. Dylan Larkin, can both score and get assists. So, that's going to boost him up. He forechecks really hard. Sometimes he over pursues. Really, for me, and I think his shooting percentage was 11% this last year, which was 3% lower than his career average. For me, it's if he can just hit the net more, he's going to score more. The most frustrating part for me with Alex DeBrincat this past year was every time he got a one-timer, it felt like he either hit the post or missed the shot, missed the net short side wide. Yep. And he's got a really quick release. It's deceptively fast, which can fool goalies, and he did that a lot. But really, it's just you got to get the puck on net. You got to get the puck on net, Alex.
Helps, eh? Helps a little bit.
Just a little. So,
now, do you think some of that, and I'm sorry, Brian, do you think some of that attributes to the fact that this is now his 3rd team in 3 seasons?
Yeah, you know what? That's a fair point, right? It's hard to adjust to a new team right away. I could make that argument for Ben Sherratt. I thought he was better this year than he was his first year with the team.
He was, we said that too.
To the extent that I would say down the stretch, he was a better partner for Seider than Wallman was. And that's not a shot at Wallman. I really like Jake Wallman's game. I just don't think he's a top pair defenseman, especially in the role that they had Seider playing. I think Sherratt's more built for that deployment than Wallman is, because Wallman's more of the offensive zone guy. As a defenseman, you can't put Jake Wallman in the defensive zone. You saw him struggle to clear the net front a lot. Well, but Sherratt, that's his strength. So I think second year in the system will benefit him. And let's be honest, he had 27 goals this year. 3 pucks bounce his way, he's at 30. Right. So, I mean, you could say just as easily it will decline, but I have a hard time believing that, especially as, you hope this roster gets even better this next year. So I guess to answer your question, Carlo, it would be Alex DeBrincat as the next breakout level player. But I don't know if you would qualify that as a breakout, more just a return to form.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I'm with you all day there. And I'll be honest with you, if I were to give you my spin on that, but the prospect edition, if Mazur makes the team, I would totally agree there. But I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on Albert Johansson. I feel like there's something there. I don't want to put out too much of a crazy take here. That's not what I'm trying to do, but if he makes the roster, keep your eye on him. I feel like he is a silent but deadly player and prospect.
And he's in the same situation as Berggren, right? So it's almost like he has to, or you have to trade him, right? But same thing, Brian, where you have all these spots. Steve Yzerman loaded on the defensive end. You signed Olli Mata last season randomly to the 2 years. I was so confused by that. Jake Wallman right around the same time too, and you're stuck. So where does he fit? Because we actually just recorded with Hockeytown West podcast, who does Grand Rapids Griffins episodes as well. And I asked the question, I noticed Aljo's playing right-handed top pair with Edvinsson, and he played left-handed top pair. So where do you see him fit on this roster?
Well, he has one thing really going for him, and that's the fact that he's a left shot D who can play right side. It is really hard to fill up the right side in basically any position in hockey because most people are right-handed, which means that's their dominant hand on top of the stick, making them left-handed shots. I myself, I'm left-handed, so I'm a right-handed shot. It's just that's statistically how it goes. So the fact that he can play right side as a left shot D-man is actually super, super advantageous to him making the roster. But like that, you hit on the Olimata signing, right? Like he doesn't have a no trade clause. I like Olimata. I do. I think he is a fine bottom pair defenseman. He is safe, but he's also, and I don't mean this in a mean sense, but he's also expendable because he doesn't have a no trade clause. Because he only makes $3 million for one more year. He is your easiest defenseman to offload onto a team. So, I mean, I think because Jeff Petrie, he's been retained twice. I know a lot of people don't want to move him. He's got 1 year left on his deal, and he's probably retiring. Like they're going to ride it out with him. He's got a partial no trade clause, I think. He's got a no movement clause and a modified no trade clause. Correct. So, when you're talking about D-men that you could actually realistically move, it's Justin Hull through buyout or just through hope and a prayer on a trade, or Olimata, who's wholly tradable. So Albert Johansson, he needs to be in the NHL next year. He's ready for the NHL. I think his ceiling, absolute best, is like second pair defenseman, but I think more realistically, he's a really, really good third pair defenseman. Yeah. He is like, in my eyes, he's like Olimata, but if he could score. Like, if that makes sense. Like a little bit higher upside in the fact that he's really defensively responsible, but he does have some offense in him. It's just, you don't expect it. But I know, and I don't put a lot of stock in the plus minus. I hate that category. But there's not a lot of advanced stats for the AHL. Think he did lead the Griffins or was near the top of the Griffins in the plus minus category, which is reassuring that they was a good Grand Rapids team. But to be the top of your team, I'm looking at more relative to your teammates. There is a little like this much. Just like that much space to be said about that. Because, I mean, Justin Hull also, I think, led the Red Wings in plus minus. He played 38 games. So,
at one point, he was leading the league in plus minus too, Brian. Justin Hull.
Got a lot of comments about how that's why they should be playing Justin Hull. And I'm like, nah, we're good.
Well, awesome. Yeah. And Brian, let me know if this is a question I should be asking. If not, I can totally edit this out. But if this is a good question, I'm going to leave this whole entire part in here too. So I did a little digging, did a little researching. I work in sales, so I have some tools to kind of do a little professional stalking on my end, but it is public knowledge because I'm sure you've mentioned that on your podcast, but you used to work for Little Caesars Arena at the team store. I kind of want you to tell me a little bit about that because I feel like 18-year-old me, if I was talking to you right now and I found out that you used to work for the team store, I'd be like, bro, get me in there. Because I would want to be as close to the Red Wings as possible. So what was that like? How'd you get in? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure, man. So first thing to note, you may be physically close to the Red Wings, but it's a totally different organization. The concessions and the retail inside Little Caesars Arena is run by a company by Delaware North, public knowledge. So they are like a professional sports concessions and retail juggernaut. I believe the owner is the owner of the Bruins, I think. I don't. I fact check me on that before you put this in the episode. Fact check me on that before you put this in the episode. But like he's Comerica Parks, Delaware North too for their concessions. How I got started, I was in college and I wanted a part-time job to make money while I was in college. And there used to be a store on Big Beaver Road called Hockeytown Authentics. And I was like, I love Red Wings. At the time I was working retail already at Menards. So I was like, I'm going to go there. And it was more money to go to Hockeytown Authentics. So I was like, easy upgrade. I get to talk Red Wings. It's a smaller store, so a lot less like actual, don't want to sound lazy, but a lot less work because it was a small store. And then over time, like I had a couple managers that left. I had been there for a few years. My previous manager, one of the managers who had left, had gotten promoted. She's the current team store manager, Tara. I love her. She's one of my favorite bosses of all time. She recommended me to take over as manager of the Hockeytown Authentics in Troy. And then the pandemic hit and everything shut down like 3 months into my tenure as store manager. So after that, it was like 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years. And I was like, all right, I gotta find a new job. And right as I was like about ready to go to a new job is when they took me off furlough. But they're like, hey, we're gonna keep Hockeytown Authentics closed until we can figure out what we're doing with it. Because at the time, Red Wings, Tigers, Pistons, they all stunk. They all stunk. And we are, as an extension of the arena, had arena prices. So it was hard to sell merchandise at the time. The store wasn't making a lot of money. So coming out of COVID, they wanted to be careful about opening up too much, like everybody was.
Yeah.
So they basically what they did is they moved me downtown. I kept my title as Hockeytown Authentic Store Manager, but I was an assistant manager at the team store. And from there, chaos reigned, man. Working at LCA, I'll tell you this, it was fast paced. You were never bored there, but it was hella stressful. Stressful. Do people still say hella, by the way? Am I showing my age?
All the time.
So as part of the team store, Pistons and the Wings play out of there, and they do concerts. I mean, there were weeks where I worked 70 hours. It was concerts sometimes could be up to 16 hours long. So it was a pretty brutal schedule. And I loved my coworkers, and that's the one thing I will say. And I was management, so like I had to work those hours. Like the part-timers, obviously they're held to a bar, but like I loved my coworkers, and I just talked to like Tara's the team store manager there now. She's great. She's still there. She's one of my favorite people. If you run into Tara at the team store, tell her Brian says hi.
Deal.
And I like all my other bosses too were fantastic as well. All my colleagues were great, and we were kind of like in it together in a sense. Like, I don't want to say miserable, but the saying misery loves company was kind of that, like stress loved company in that instance, because it's a high stress environment. You're just you have a deadline. You're there from when the game starts, or not from when the game starts, but from when we have to get there to start getting the store ready till if the Pistons play next, we have to flip the entire store over to Pistons or vice versa, which means you could be there till 11 p.m. So like there's probably the strongest camaraderie I've ever had with coworkers. But man, was it physically, was it exhausting? Yeah, no kidding. I mean, there was one day that the longest concert I ever worked was 9 hours long, not 9 hours, 16 hours long, I think. Hope I'm not exaggerating. I think I got there at like 10 in the morning, and we didn't leave until 3 in the morning. So it's 14 hours, 14 hours long.
It had to have been Taylor Swift, right?
No, it was J. Cole. It was J. Cole.
Yeah, that'll do her. That'll do her.
Okay.
Yeah. And I won't get into the details of it, but I just remember I checked my health app after the concert had ended and we had wrapped up, and I had walked over 9 miles that day around the arena. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. I mean, concerts are a whole different beast. Games are pretty like they're streamlined. They're very streamlined because we own our own merchandise. We know the structure. So while they can be stressful, like, what you're doing. Concerts, like from concert to concert to concert, it's completely different because they bring in their own merchandise. We have to check it in the day of and set up all the stands and get the merch distributed. At the end of the day, we have to then break down the merch, bring the merch back to, and then count it all again before we can leave in order to make sure the numbers match up. So concerts were they were a whole different beast, and we had some that were really smooth. It varies so much depending on person to person, like show to show. Like the real big stars had their stuff together, so like it wasn't always true, but a lot of the instances, some of the smoothest shows we ran were the big time shows, like Harry Styles, Justin Bieber. Those ones were smooth sailing.
Yeah, well-oiled machines, right?
Their merchandise people like had it.
They knew what they were
doing.
They
were
doing. They were dialed. Yeah.
But nothing beats the small shows. The small shows were like, you had 3 stacks of clothing. You go to, oh, here you go.
Right. A folding table. Yeah. You go.
It was like both simultaneously, like part of me misses it because it was that fast paced environment, and nothing beat being at every single Red Wings game, being part of that environment. But part of me is also like, I don't know if my body could have physically taken a career in that because it was a lot of walking on hard concrete floors. So there are people with tougher jobs, though. I'm not going to try and say it was the toughest job in the world. But
imagine if your job was walking up and down the flights of stairs at Joe Louis Arena with all the clothing.
Right. That was wild, man.
Yeah, it was both a blast and a huge stress job, and I think all my colleagues would probably agree with me on that. Nothing beats the excitement in the air on opening night, but there are some nights where you're just like, we're just trying to survive, bro.
Yeah. Well, 18-year-old me is now glad that I probably didn't get the chance to ask you that what's it like to work in the store? Because 18-year-old me probably wouldn't have liked that answer, to be honest with you. 18-year-old Zach was very lazy at that time. Very much a lot of video games and just watching hockey.
I mean, I'm not trying to do PR for him or anything, but like, I'll tell you, if you like, it is really fun to be down there during game days, and the fast-paced environment, if that's the type of environment you like as an employee, it's perfect for you. But I like sitting behind a microphone and talking to people. Yep. So I was great at the customer service aspect. I'll tell you that much. Because I can talk.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome.
Well, Brian, yeah. Carlo, do you want to ask any more questions? I really don't have any more questions.
I do got one more. I do have one more quick one.
Go ahead.
We could just maybe Brian could just hit us with a yes or no. So I'm going to say a player name. They're all ex-Red Wing, and they all happen to be UFAs. I'm just going to say their name. There's 4 of them. And just give me a yes or no.
You probably already know who they are, Brian, too.
Nedeljkovic. Would you bring him back?
What did he make this year? Do you know? Sorry, I'm already breaking the rules.
What did he make dollar-wise?
Yeah.
Ned made, I want to say he was like in the 3s. I can find out real quick for you, though. No problems.
I'm actually...
Ned was... I actually don't know what Ned was at.
He is... it just says...
Yeah, I don't know. Because he was 3. He was 3 million, right on the nose.
There we go.
So I'm going to say no, just from personal experience.
Okay,
we've seen what Ned can be, but I will say he had a really good bounce back year. So someone's gonna pay him, a decent contract, I think. But I'll say no, just based on personal experience.
Okay, these are 2 guys or 1 guy you mentioned already. Dominic Kubalik. Would you bring him back?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
Okay.
He wasn't even cracking the lineup with the Ottawa Senators down the stretch, and they were the second last place team in the division.
I like that answer. Anthony Mantha.
Oh, I love this one. So this is hilarious because, I talked about him at the trade deadline as
you wanted him at trade deadline, didn't you?
Like half serious because I'm really careful about retreading players we've seen before because I don't want to get burned twice. But I'm like, he's had a decent career with the Washington Capitals. Like he's carved a niche for himself. He's a decent half point per game power forward. And, it's going to determine what he wants, but I don't think that there's a roster spot for him, so I will say no. Okay, but I will say
you wouldn't mind it.
I wouldn't mind it.
Okay.
Yeah. But I was also biased towards Anthony Mantha when he was on the team. I always thought he could be the guy.
Yeah, me too. I'll never forget that game against Dallas. I believe it was home opener, and he scored 4. I was at that game. That was unbelievable.
I thought for sure you were going to hit me with a Philip Peronic, even though I think he's an RFA. And I was going to be like, dude,
No, not hitting you with a Philip Peronic, but I'm going to hit you with the last one, and that's Tyler Bertuzzi.
Nah.
He's straight up nah.
I was kind of expecting that. To be honest with you, I really was expecting. He didn't really do anything that stood out to me this year.
I was kind of shocked that he did not do as well as I thought he would with Toronto.
I mean, when you're playing with Austin Matthews and you can't even crack the 30-goal marker that you hit with the Red Wings, I mean, the 30-goal marker he hit was clearly now just an outlier. I like Bert a lot. I think he's a fun player in the locker room. I think he's fun to watch on the ice. His hijinks are entertaining, and he's decently productive. I don't want to make it sound like he's like a scrub. Someone's going to pay him a decent contract. But I also don't think he's as good as a lot of people think he is. I think the 30-goal season has a lot of people fooled. He's not an incredible skater. He doesn't have the best of hands. He's not attacking onto the skating. He's not incredibly fast either. I feel like the things he does best are just getting to the net, and which is something the Red Wings do need, and I will admit that. But I just don't know if he's going to be worth what he's going to get on the open market for the Red Wings' sake. And I think that you already have a clear upgrade over a player like Tyler Bertuzzi in a guy by the name of Carter Mazur.
Yeah.
So
who's got that same level of dog in him.
And is on a much more affordable contract.
Correct. Oh, yeah. Correct. Well, that wraps me up, man. That's all I had. I just wanted to have a little bit of fun with that one. Cool. So I appreciate your honest takes on that, man. That was great.
Of course.
Yeah, Brian, honestly, my LCA one, the team store one, that was my last question, honestly. So Brian, do you have any questions for us? I know that we're here to ask you the questions and you're to answer, but do you have any questions for us?
What do you guys want the Red Wings to do this offseason?
Ooh, yeah. I guess I can go first. Majorly, I would love an upgrade on goaltending. I don't know if that's shipping, Husso out, or maybe there's a situation where maybe he just can't play anymore if you have to put him on LTIR. That's a scenario. But if it's not goaltending, I think it's just top six immediate help, right? Some winger help. I do think JT Comfort is a decent 2C, but if you can find someone who could play winger or be because that's the biggest thing for me, right? Is when Dylan Larkin was out, all we had was Lucas Raymond, and it took a little bit of time for Lucas Raymond to kind of pop off the way he did towards the end there, but it's top six help as well for me personally. What about you, Carlo?
For me, I'm with you there on the top six, even top nine. Just I would like to have a player come in who's able to make a difference in that top six, top nine, more top six. That's my number one. My number two, and the reason why that's my number one is because like when Dylan Larkin's not on this team, we are barely an AHL team. That can't happen. So that's why that's my number one. My number two is, and I'm going to, I guess, add some context to this one, is really figuring out the D. If that means bringing in a top four D-man or two, and then having two rookies on the third pairing, if that's even possible, that's my number two. And the context around that is because this D-core that we have right now, and I don't want to blame the player, the personnel 100%. I do think it could have been managed a little bit differently, like we talked about earlier, but they burnt out our goalies, man. I said this on one of our shows a while ago. Like, I feel like you could put any goalie in our net and you put that D-core out and manage it the way that it was managed, and that goalie's not going to have a good year.
Yep.
So I really don't know how keen I am on addressing the netminder position right away. I think I would definitely put defense over that for sure, because I feel like a top four D-man could really change the course of our goaltenders. And like you said, Brian, it could shelter Husso or Lyon way better to be a better goalie and have better numbers come the end of the year. So those are my number two. Those are my two things.
So what's really interesting about the things you guys said is that every single one of them is correct.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it really does show that while this team made a jump and they just barely missed the playoffs, you still have a long way to go before you're a cup contending team.
Totally, man.
Zach, I don't know what you said about the goaltending. Like, it's pretty clear the Red Wings want to carry three goalies, right? They did it all season long. They did have talks at one point about waiving a goalie or trading a goalie away. So I think they're going to sign a third goalie. I think that will be addressed. And if Husso can stays healthy, you'll have a healthy tandem.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll have the best tandem in the NHL.
Of course.
But if you can be middle of the pack, you'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But Carlo is 100% spot on, right? Like, and it even goes back to the Sider conversation too, right? Like, you need to be able to put defensemen out there who can get the puck out of the zone, who can, keep in particular, keep players. How many? It felt like, I don't know the actual statistic, but it felt like as a Red Wings fan, they led the league in tipped goals against. How many times did they fail to clear the front of the net and a puck was deflected in past them? Like, you need to be able to shelter your goalie better too. And that also then goes to your forwards, right? I think the defense needs improvements, but the forwards need to learn how to play defense better too. Yeah, defensively, the forwards were abysmal. And again, that's roster construction. Like, this is all going back, wrapping around to the conversation that we started the episode with. But like, you had a bunch of forwards who are known historically to be offense only, so the defense was 100% responsible for puck retrieval in the defensive zone, and like, you need your forwards to be able to help out, and they just were no help. So like, to be able to help all three of those, you need to address all three of those.
Of course.
Like, they're all inherently intertwined, unfortunately, because you saw it, like you said, Carlo, goalies eventually ran into the ground. Defense, probably because they couldn't protect him, that they got run on the ground. Forwards, they weren't carrying the play. They weren't carrying possession because we didn't have enough top six forwards or forwards that could play defensively. So that meant they spent more time in the D zone. So like, all of those things combined, every single one of those is 100% the correct take.
Yeah, I mean, we said that time and time too. We're right there with you. We honestly all believe that it's everything. There's a lot of changes, or at least things that you could fix on this roster to make the team overall a better team, right? So we're definitely right there with you. So that was a great question. Thanks for asking that, Brian. Do you have any more questions for us?
No, I think our conversation that we've had back and forth has kind of covered everything from the start of this season to what to do going into the next season. We'll just have to wait for late June to figure out what they do with that 15th overall pick. And then that's
no kidding.
It's the one question mark that we're waiting on. Well, besides the 2 contracts we're waiting to have signed, but 15th overall pick outside that.
So real quick, I know I said we've asked all of our questions, but real quick, what are your expectations going into next season?
Boo. So my expectations for next season, personally, I think they do have to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Realistically, I think that they could slide backwards. And I know that those two statements directly contradict each other, but like what I want versus what I think could happen are different things.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've been very patient as Red Wings fans. Steve Yzerman has filled the cabinet. I think it's time we start seeing guys take the leap, and it's on Steve Yzerman to then also make sure that the team, here's the problem. If you add too much youth, yes, those players could be better in the long term than the veterans that you're replacing, but in the short term, they're raw. They're still rookies. They could be seasoned in the AHL, and Yzerman loves to have the philosophy of you don't call somebody up until you know that they're NHL ready. But they're still rookies. Like even Simon Edmondson, who looked fantastic, made 2 really boneheaded plays in the final couple games. I think the last game against Montreal, last 2 games against Montreal, he got burned once and then flubbed the pass right up the middle, both of which led to goals against. Like even you see them as much as you can, but the NHL is still in the NHL. You have a game plan until you get punched in the mouth. Was it Mike Tyson that said that? Like these rookies, long term, they could be better, but if you introduce too many at once, it could result in a slide in points before you take the leap.
Correct.
But I'm not ready to accept that reality because I haven't seen the playoffs since 2016. And I think if you do it right in the offseason, like I was saying earlier, you make that one big splash for that one player in the offseason, I think you could then have that balance of young talent and veterans to help carry them through the ebbs and flows of a rookie season. So, 2 answers for one question.
That's bang on though. I mean, that's the balance you want.
And you guys heard it here first. Brian Fisher is huge on Mitch Marner and Steven Stamkos.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep this brief because we keep trying to wrap it up and then I keep talking. But the Steven Stamkos thing is so interesting because before the Ryan McDonagh trade, I was like, there's no way he leaves. And then McDonagh gets traded to him. I'm like, now they have $5 million.
Yeah.
He's either going to take a huge hometown discount or they're going to trade somebody else because right now they can't afford him.
Correct.
And then I'm like, well, Yzerman and Stamkos have a history. Who do you think signed that last contract for him? I'm like,
there's something there. There might be something there.
He had 40 goals this year.
There's definitely something there.
Only concern with him is his age, kind of like with Patrick Kane, but he just scored 40 goals. So
you have to
I can't turn my nose up at that.
No. I got one more. This is for both you guys because I haven't asked this one yet. I have one more question. It's quick. Zach said, "Get me out of here."
You should start a counter, Zach, in the corner. I don't know how much editing like you do post. I do like 0 for Locked On, but like you should start a counter, and every time we say one more question, you ramp it up. We got to be in double digits.
That's how many push-ups you got to do post episode. Yeah.
Right.
Systems. Do the Red Wings need to completely change their systems? And I'll be specific. Dump and chase.
Oh, so this is another good one. Who did I have on recently that I was talking to about dump and chase? And they were like, dump and chase isn't a system. It's the result of poor play. Like, oh gosh.
Not a bad take.
It wasn't Will who I just spoke with. Who did I talk with on Tuesday? I'm so sorry. Whatever guest that I had on Tuesday, whose name I am forgetting. But the conversation that we had was that like dump and chase only happens when teams fail to get the puck out of their own zone. They get hemmed in, they're tired, they need a line change, or you fail to retrieve the puck. So dump and chase is never the intent. It's the result of not being able to cross the blue line with the puck. So it's a desperation play. It's the result of like I said, getting hemmed into the defensive zone, being tired at the end of your shift, and you need a change. So dump and chase will go away once the team gets better in their own zone, which is weird to think, but it's true. Once they get better in the defensive zone and in transition, dump and chase will go away on its own. I think changing systems is dangerous because then you risk resetting a lot. The upside is some players could break out.
Yeah.
Right? Like Ehlers, we keep talking about underutilized, or Natchez with Carolina, underutilized because of their system.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also risk resetting the development you've seen in some players in that system.
Sure.
So I think that if you're going to change a system, it comes with a change in head coach. And that, again, that's if Lalone just can't, after the third season, he can't what's the word? Keep up, I guess.
So we got that third season to really watch. But it's very interesting the way you kind of add the perspective of that, and it really kind of exposes how bad. Not that this is a surprise, and it probably isn't a surprise to anybody, but the Detroit Red Wings are absolutely terrible in their own zone.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why their system almost seems like it is a dump and chase system. Like they truly are they were that awful in their own zone. So hopefully we see that change. We talked about some ideas and some things that we are hopeful for to see this offseason to change that and to change the outcome of what plays like in their own zone. And maybe you're right, Brian. Maybe as a result of that, we won't see the dump and chase and we will see the true system come out, which is what I'm hopeful for. So
it must have been Tony Ferrari, I think, is the guest because it wasn't Will who we just had on today. So it must have been Tony Ferrari, just to make sure that I give credit where credit's due.
Fair enough. Absolutely. We love it.
Also, Brian, I did look up the company that you worked for also with the Boston Bruins. I did fact check that for you. So.
Okay, was I right?
You were right. Yes,
right,
correct. Good. Yep. So good work, bud. Nice.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
No editing in post.
Yes. Brian, I think this is where we can finally say thank you very much for taking.
I got one more. I'm joking.
Longer than expected. We were going to have you on. We definitely greatly appreciate for answering all
totally.
of our questions,
Absolutely.
taking the time out of your week to do this recording with us. It's definitely a pleasure having you on, and it was a blast. And we'd love to have you on again in the near future.
Yeah, just ask anytime.
Yeah, for sure. But why don't you go ahead, take a second to let the viewers know your podcast, your socials, everything, whatever you got to say, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, of course. I'm the host of Locked On Red Wings along with Scotty Bentley. We cover the Red Wings and Red Wings adjacent things like the Griffins every day. Well, every weekday, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, with few exceptions. We do go down to 3 days a week, July through August, but then back to 5 days a week in September. So we are 30 minutes long. So if you want daily Red Wings content for your commute to work, or if you're like me, when you're drinking coffee on the couch in the morning, because I'm currently unemployed, then give us a listen. You can find me at Twitter at Brian Fisher, LORW. That stands for Locked On Red Wings. And my co-host Scotty's at Bentley Scotty. And the podcast Twitter handle is at LO_Red Wings.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, Brian, if you guys don't follow them, listen to them, watch them, wherever you can find them, do that now. Great stuff that they always produce. I was just telling Brian how right before we recorded that I was watching. I think I watched like 4 of your most previous episodes because I was really far behind, and you guys put out some really great stuff. And just like how I said before, I find you guys, you and Scotty, both very genuine, very honest people, and you guys try to. I know you like to say fence sitter, and I don't like to utilize that word, but I think what you say pretty much speaks volume, and it really does correlate with a lot of things that are going on with the Detroit Red Wings and Grand Rapids, and it really does hit fans the correct way. And so thanks for putting out such amazing work that you've been doing. And once again, thanks for hopping on this podcast with us, Carlo. I don't know if you got anything you want to say.
I got claps for Brian, claps for the Locked On Red Wings team. We love it. And we love being able to collaborate and use the platform to talk Red Wings hockey, so passionately with you guys, with anybody. So this has been great, Brian. We can't thank you enough, man. We really appreciate your time. And we really look forward to the next time we're able to get together, man. It was great.
Absolutely. No competition, all love between Red Wings podcasts.
Always.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And from here, Brian, we can officially sign out. Once again, thanks for hopping on this episode with us. And until next time, we'll see y'all here in a little bit. We'll see you later, Brian.
See ya.
And we're back. Boys, honestly, Brian Fisher's the GOAT.
He's the GOAT. He is him. He is him.
I really only expected it to go half an hour, but it was so great that the flow just kept continuing. And so
Yeah.
that's showbiz for you.
You're upset that I didn't get to be on the podcast still. So
we're very sorry, Derek. You got to ask to go back on today's.
Yeah, second shift is starting to kill me here.
Yeah.
I can't do anything with anybody. I mean, it's nice being able to have that sunshine in the middle of the day that no one else gets. But then I'm by myself all night, so I don't know what to do.
Like, which one do I want? No, that was a good one. It was a good one, and hopefully we can get you on another one upcoming. But yeah, that was a great interview, Brian. Obviously, been doing this for quite some time. Very knowledgeable, which is great, and it was just cool to get his perspective and bounce quite a few things off of him, just to kind of hear what he had to say about it, and the way he broke things down was awesome. So as always, and giving credit where credit is due, claps for Brian. Claps for Brian, because that was great. We appreciate it, Brian. Thank you, man.
Yeah, and for us on here on this podcast, it's very easy for us to conjoin thoughts and ideas and just agree with each other very unanimously, right? Because we're just so tight knit like that having that other person step in and kind of give their thoughts and ideas on the Red Wings and just hearing what they have to say about it, whether if you agree or not, it's always good to hear other people's thoughts and ideas on what the Red Wings did this past season, what they can do moving forward, and just the outward look and shape that this team is forming. So, Derek, I wish you were there. It's unfortunate, but I would love to have Brian Fisher back on the podcast, much like everyone else that we always have on. So, Brian, I'm sure that the Grand Rapids Griffins won because of you, and because of that, they are able to stick around. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the Red Wings news, and then we will round up with the around the league news and then final thoughts. And so, Toledo Walleye down 3-2 in their series against the Kansas City Mavericks. Still haven't been to a game. I probably should.
I mean, you might have one more opportunity on this one, buddy.
Yeah, honestly. And it's funny that you say that, Derek, because back when the last time the Griffins won the Calder Cup, when Tyler Bertuzzi was on the team, George came up to me. He's like, hey, do you want to go to game 6? And I was like, no, I want to drink tonight, being the college kid that I was. And he's like, but they might not play game 7. And I was like, well, I'll take the risk and I'll go to game 7 tomorrow if we can go tomorrow. There was no game 7, and I didn't. So I got to miss it, boys. It was a bit salty still about that, but yeah, maybe I should take the opportunity and go to that. But hopefully they can pull it off. It's getting close, but at least they're doing better than last year, where they got shut out in the 3rd round, where they went sweeping.
I mean, I got kind of scared looking at this, the way they were playing. I'm like, they look a lot like last year. I'm like, I really hope they don't do the same thing they did last year.
Yeah, it was looking close. It really was, honestly. And then going into that, you talk about the Grand Rapids Griffins, which is now tied 2-2, thanks to Brian Fisher being there in their series against the Milwaukee Admirals, and play tonight, Sunday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Milwaukee. The winner will move on to the conference finals. What would this mean for the Grand Rapids Griffins and the Red Wings organization as a whole, Carlo?
For me, honestly, it's, we talked about this towards the end of the Red Wings season with Lucas Raymond doing what he did, but it's the clutch gene. When these kids are playing these really, really meaningful games, and you parlay that with, the expectation of these younger kids making that next step next season, coming up to the Red Wings. I mean, credit to Yzerman for really keeping them down there this season, no matter how hard it was or how much they wanted to, recall some of these players into the big club. I think now we're starting to really understand why they got, I don't want to say stifled, but they got, no, you're staying there. And look what's happening as a result. And if they can pull it off today, I mean, those are clutch genes being activated that don't get activated without days like today happening. You know what I mean? Without coming back from a deficit, without tying up the series. And then I don't want to speak too soon, but hopefully, some good news happens tonight, and those clutch genes are really going to be turned on. When you can do stuff like that, and then you go into an off season, you're fired up, man. You are fired up. And next thing you know, it's training camp and you're still fired up and you're fighting for a spot And the hope is that Clutch Gene kind of keeps staying on and maybe goes to level 11, level 12. And next thing you know, you got 3 younger guys on the Red Wings who are playing very, very good, fired up hockey because they're coming off of such a big high. So that's where I'm at with it all. That's the way I'm kind of breaking it down in my mind and thinking about it. I think it's awesome. And good luck to the Griffins tonight, man. We are all rooting on you guys, and there's a lot of good things to come for sure.
Derek, what's the score prediction for tonight's game for the Grand Rapids Griffins?
Ooh, for tonight's game, are they home? Or are they away? I think they're away.
They're away.
Yeah, they were home on Friday. So I'm going to go 4-1. Nate Dennison pops in 2.
If he's even in the lineup, he was
Yeah,
not in the lineup for the last game after joining the team for 2 games. And honestly, boys, from what Hockeytown West boys said and from some other people, he really did not look the greatest, but to probably no fault of his own. I mean, this is his 3rd team in 1 season.
Yeah.
2nd league, 3rd coach, 3rd team.
Going on a playoff run.
Yeah, went on a deep playoff run, and so you got to give the kid a break at some point, But I mean, the Griffins already have so many players, like Bouillon, just to name one. Like they have a lot of players not playing already, and they're forcing in and out of the lineup. Like I know they're playing with 7 defensemen, or at least they did the last game. That seems to be working for them. 11 forwards, so. Yeah, this team is just super deep. And much like when we talked to Nick from Hockeytown West, if you haven't watched that episode, go ahead and check it out. That was a couple of weeks ago. It's going to be interesting to see how the Grand Rapids Griffins roster is going to shape up next year. But yeah, right now, if they win tonight, just making the conference finals alone has exceeded my expectations on how deep they could have gone. So I think even if they didn't make it to the championship, I think the organization as a whole would be very satisfied with the way that they handled the season. I mean, they weren't good at the start and they turned it around, but these meaningful games, like you said, Carlo, yeah, I would agree. But talking about prospects too, McKean's Hockey has the Detroit Red Wings take the top spot with the number 1 prospect pool in the NHL, led by prospect none other than Simon Edvinsson. And I'll go ahead and just go over the list real quick. And I'll go from 1st to 10th. Simon Edvinsson, Nate Danielson, Marco Kasper, Axel Sandin Palika, Sebastian Kosa, Trey Augustine, Carter Mazer, William Wallander, Shai Bouillon, Dmitry Buchelnikov. Are you guys shocked? Like, is there anyone you're missing? Would you say
I'm just happy to see the fact that we have 2 goalies up in the top 10 right now. Like, who else?
Never seen that before.
Like, I've never seen that on the Red Wings, nor in any other team. Seeing a prospect pool this deep, it's like I feel like the Red Wings are on a good track for what we have, especially watching the Griffins right now. I mean, that's our feeder team. Those are the guys that we were wondering why they weren't getting brought up all year. Well, do you really want to bring up some guys to get smacked around to maybe make the playoffs and get knocked out in the first round, or have that team push through and win the cup in their own league? It's really back and forth for us, but at the same time, we're seeing the benefits of keeping them down there, like Carlos said. Steve did a good job at that, and it's fun to watch.
Red Wings fans are just antsy because it's been so long since we've sniffed.
That's what it is. That's
right.
100% what it is. And you can't blame them.
Yeah, we're just being greedy, right? We're saying, I mean, at one point I think all of us were, probably a lot of Red Wings fans, we were just saying, screw the Griffins. The Red Wings are the most important. They bring in the most money. They bring in the most viewership. Yeah, but like you just said, Derek, do we want these players to get shelled out like in the NHL? Like, they're doing really great in the Grand Rapids Griffins. And like I said, they were struggling at the start. They finally picked up their momentum. All these kids need to play together because eventually they will play together in the Red Wings organization 2-3 years down the line. So let them continue to cook. Let them keep doing what they're doing. But yeah, in terms of this list, you guys don't have any qualms with it? Like in terms of placement, they're missing anyone?
Run through it one more time, Zach.
Edvinson, Danielson, Casper, Palika, Kosa, Augustine, Mazer, Wallander, William, Buchelnikov.
Danielson seems he might be a little high on that list just because he's so young, but his production this year might cancel that out. So we'll just ignore those first couple games with the Griffins because he has to get used to it anyways.
Yeah, systems and stuff. Honestly, that's not a bad list, even ranked. That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like some of them you could probably just change one or two slots maybe, but other than that, like there's no like huge like, oh yeah, Buchelnikov should be in the top 5 or at least number 6. Trey Augustine should be above Kosa, blah blah blah. There's none of that. So I would agree with this majority of it. I did hear a lot of people griping a little bit about where's Berggren, where's Johansson on here. Unfortunately, they're not really prospects anymore.
Right.
One, because of age, and two, Berggren at least has played almost a whole entire season in the NHL. Yeah. So Johansson age with him alone. So we're getting there finally,
Yeah, exactly.
A long awaited time. Who would have thought? I mean, 5 years ago we signed Steve Yzerman to that contract to be the GM, and now it's all shaping up. I was just thinking about that this morning. I was like, damn, Mo Seider really has been on the team for this long. Lucas has been on the team for this long. It's pretty crazy to think about it like that. So around the league news, playoff updates.
Oh boy.
Woo.
What was it? The Stars won last night, 3-1. So it's Stars versus the Oilers in the Western Conference Final, and then the Florida Panthers versus the New York Rangers in the Eastern Conference Final. For those of you that aren't paying attention and watching, both series are tied 1-1. And then today at 3 p.m., you have the Rangers going up against the Florida Panthers. Who do you boys got? I guess let's ask the question. Who do you guys got in each series? Honestly, I think it's Dallas versus the Rangers.
That one hurt you to say out loud.
It was just like it's this Eastern Conference Final that's like confusing me because I like the Rangers. I feel like they're a little more composed, but then you look at the Panthers and it's like they have Matt Tkachuk on there who just they have a lot of players on their team that just know how to get underneath your skin. And that's why I hesitated a little bit, because somehow, some way, I feel like they could come around, and you never know. The Bob Father could just steal you those couple games that you need. So,
battle of the Russian goalies, that's for sure.
Who do you guys got?
I'm going with you on the Dallas one over Edmonton. I just think Dallas is the more rounded playoff team in general. They're just packed full of superstars and veterans that are just pushing. Everyone knew they were going to be in the finals. And I think we're seeing why. The Rangers in Florida, I feel you, Zach. I am so back and forth on it. I feel like the Rangers can pull it up as long as Lafreniere doesn't put it in his net again. Yeah. As long as they don't have those little blemishes out there. I feel it's going to be probably going to go to Game 7 no matter what. But I think the Rangers might be able to pull it off at that point. But it's going to be a tight matchup. So I will stick with Rangers for Dallas because it doesn't even matter right now, really, because my bracket was utterly destroyed the second round. First round, second round, everything was wrong. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, my bracket was pretty goofed up, too. And as much as I really don't want Dallas to make it, but I just don't want Jamie Benn to win.
The only person on that team we don't like.
Yeah. What about you, Carlo?
I got Rangers. I think, it's funny. I was talking to my friend of mine's dad about this, and I said, and I think this happened. Yeah, this was on Friday night, so this would have been the last game they played. I said, if Rempe's in and Rempe's out there shutting down Tkachuk, Rangers are going to win. And sure enough, the Rangers won. I don't know if Rempe specifically shut down Tkachuk, but I know Rempe was in, and I know he was doing Rempe things. If he continued, I think he was even out there with 2 minutes left in the game, to be honest with you. I think I saw one of his post-game interviews, and he was talking about how he was absolutely shocked that Lavi called him out to go and wrap up the game with a couple minutes left. I thought that was awesome. But if he continues to play, I think that's the bite they need to kind of match up with Florida. Because we know I've been saying this since January. Florida is the most complete team, in terms of skill, rough, bite, all that stuff. They just are a true playoff caliber team, a Stanley Cup caliber team. But I think the Rangers are also up there as well. And I think, like I said, if Rempe's in, I think the Rangers have every chance to win just as much as Florida does. But for that series, I got the Rangers in 7. And for Edmonton and Dallas, I got Dallas in 6.
All right.
Yeah.
Not bad picks, boys. There's only so many you can take anyways. So
Four teams left, boys.
Someone's bound.
Done.
Someone's bound to get it right. Yeah, it's pretty crazy that the season's already almost over, and then you got the draft right around the corner. Then free agency hits. Honestly, this off season's going by pretty quickly.
It is. I just wish we had some signings to talk about.
Yeah, we're getting there, but we do have some trades to talk about, Carlo, because the Tampa Bay Lightning have acquired Ryan McDonough plus a 4th-round pick from the Nashville Predators for a 2nd round and a 7th-round pick. Barry Trotz says Ryan McDonough asked for at exit meetings for the team to consider trading him this summer. Trotz says the trade today was more about that request than clearing cap room. So good looks on him, but a lot of people are now asking how in the hell are Tampa Bay going to sign Steven Stamkos when they only have like $5 million left on their contract or on their roster, and they need to sign like 6 players or something like that. And a lot of people are saying, oh, they could just trade someone else. And it's like, okay, so you're clearing more cap to sign Stamkos, and then you have no cap to go get the other 6 players that you need?
It's 7. They need 7 players. They got to sign 7.
Even worse.
Even better. Yeah. Yep.
Like, what is going on here? Like, did they really need to bolster up their defense that badly? And like, how are they going to keep Stamkos? We don't have to spend too much time on this, but I feel like that's kind of writing on the wall, right?
I'm just waiting for Stevie to reach out to Stamkos and see what happens if he wants to come play for his old GM.
Probably already has.
I hope so.
I would love to get a Stamkos. I mean, I don't know where you would put him. Obviously, top 6.
I would say put him on top of the circle and just feed him slap shots all night. That's all we need.
I mean, you got to put him with someone. If that were to happen and he were to come to Detroit, you got to put him with someone that is going to be able to get him looks, right? So I don't know. I like I've always liked the idea of having a 1A, 1B line. So I wouldn't mind seeing him on obviously the 2nd line, but I would also at that point put Raymond up there or Raymond down there on the 2nd line as well. And again, not a shot at Raymond, but just to really create a 1A, 1B as opposed to a line 1, line 2. Because I really think a Raymond Stamkos on the 2nd line is just as, if not more dangerous than your top line. It really could pan out to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, if we had like a Stamkos Kaner 2nd line,
that would be that. I mean, I really wanted to say Kane, but I just don't know where we're at there, man. I don't know where we're at with that. Like every day that goes by, it makes me like.
The more that time goes by, the more I am what's the word I want to use here? I am uncertain that Patrick Kane is going to stay with the Detroit Red Wings. I'm kind of now on the fence where I'm leaning more towards he's not going to come back, which really does suck because even if you go and get Stamkos, and let's say, like I said, we don't have to spend too much time on this, but this is just my thoughts, right? If you were to go out and get Stamkos, put him on the 2nd line, sweet 2nd line, Stamkos, Comfer, Raymond. Then you got to go out and get someone for the top line now.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Bring Larkin, and then who are you going to put up there?
Well, Brian mentioned he was a big fan of Ehlers, and so am I. I think
you wanted to trade for him, correct? Yeah,
I think he's great, and I honestly think I don't know if he's being utilized the way he would want to be utilized right now, but there's an idea there to do something like that to round things out. But hey, thank God we're not Steve Yzerman.
You got a rough off season there, Stevie. I'd hate to be you.
Yeah, just right now. But when the season starts, we'd love to be you, Steve, just for the record.
I just don't want any of the work you have to do, but I want to be you, so it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you wouldn't want to be a GM right now because a lot of them are switching boats and shipping sales because the LA Kings have removed the interim tag and signed Jim Hiller to a 3-year contract extension as a head coach with a 4th-year option. The Devils hire Sheldon Keefe as a next head coach. I know I spoke about GMs. I'm getting there. These are head coaches first. Hurricanes announced Friday that Waddle, their general manager, stepped down, and Tulski, I don't know his first name, is interim GM. And then it was confirmed, I believe, yesterday. It seems to believe that Waddle is the next Blue Jackets general manager. So not Ken Holland. I thought it would be Ken Holland, but he got to keep his job for a little bit longer because his team made it to the conference finals. But if they don't make it to the Stanley Cup championship, I do believe that he will be out of that organization. That's my opinion. We don't have to talk about that. But the last thing I wanted to talk about, and I love this. This is Possum. Yes, the dad joke of the day. The NHL will host the first ever Stanley Pup Rescue Dog competition with pups representing all 32 NHL teams. The show will include celebrity dog lovers and a friendly competition with pups representing the 16 teams from the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs. I think that's the coolest thing the NHL's ever freaking done.
It's pretty cool. It is pretty cool.
That is awesome. What celebrities? Are they going to get Ryan Reynolds, Snoop Dogg, and, you know?
I mean,
Will
I'm hoping
Ferrell.
we get bigger celebrities than the pro game. So, I mean, I guess Justin Bieber is pretty big, but I just don't
Justin
care that
Bieber,
much
Tate
about him.
McRae.
Yeah.
I don't. Who is Tate
Lay.
McRae? I still haven't understood who that is.
You're too old for her, bro.
Apparently, I looked her up and I was like, does she sing? Does she dance? Like, what do you do? I'm very confused.
Her brother plays hockey. I'm not sure what league he plays in, but yeah, she's a singer, dancer, I believe, but I don't know any of her music. I just know the NHL promoted her one song, and her like music video was like referencing hockey too. So,
well, she was the musical guest at the All-Star game as well.
correct.
Well, that makes
Yeah.
more sense then.
So,
Yeah, she's good. I mean, it's pop. You know what I mean? Like she's got some bangers out there that are banging around some speakers, but
around some speakers. Great quote by Carlo on Tate McRae there. That's what he's going to be doing this Sunday afternoon when we hop off the pod, boys. All right. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of around the league news. I've been really bad about keeping up with it, but honestly, I think we could wrap it up here. This is a long episode. Thank you all for sticking around. If you made it this long, thank you. If you haven't already, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
Please do.
Thumbs up all the way. And I didn't mention this earlier. If you're on Spotify, obviously the 5 stars, and then hit the follow button. And I always forget to do this, but I did it on the last episode. I said it at the beginning. I'm going to say it now. We do have our store available, merch and apparel. It is very hot outside. Like we mentioned all week, it's been in the 80s, high 80s. Now it's kind of going down, but summer's fastly approaching. Get yourself a tank top. Get yourself a Hockeytown rundown cap. Mine's still currently being shipped, so I would be showing it off to you, but I can't currently. But yeah, if you guys haven't done that, go ahead and check that out. And yeah, thanks everyone for stopping by. And so we'll end it here on final thoughts. Not all at once. Someone go first. Hurry.
Let's go. Final thoughts. Let's go Toledo Walleye. You stayed alive. Keep staying alive. Griffins, you stayed alive too. Win this next game. Keep it going. Red Wings, Steve, I'm sorry. Good luck this offseason. Make the team better. I don't know.
It's gonna happen. Clutch Gene. That's my final thought. Clutch Gene between the Griffins, the Walleye. They're being activated. Patience is a virtue. Good things are coming. Good things are ahead. Go Griffins. Go Walleye. And thanks again, Brian Fisher. Fish. Over to you, Zach.
My final thoughts are, just gonna copycat Derek and Carla. Go Wings, go Griffins, go Walleye, and Fish. Thanks, Brian Fisher, once again for hopping on our podcast. We definitely do appreciate it, and we hope to have you on sometime soon in the near future, much like everyone else that we record with. And that's it, boys and girls. And from here, we'll catch y'all on the next one. Goodbye.
Peace.
Bye, y'all.